If a gentle word like comfort can hide a harsh machine, what happens to our sense of truth? If a wooden sign with the phrase "Comfort Station" stands outside a small house near the front, and that doorway leads many young women into nameless fear, how should we speak? Today we will open a box of language that stayed shut for much of the 20th century. We will ask a plain question. What did the Empire of Japan do to the women it labeled for comfort? Across the Asia-Pacific from the 1930s to 1945. I will tell it in everyday language. No complicated theories, no difficult jargon. Only clear pieces placed side by side so we can see the whole picture. We will move in layers, from the name, to the organization, to daily life, to the echoes that still linger now. First, we need to be honest about the label, comfort. It sounds like a service. In practice, it was a system. The system grew with the movements of the military. It appeared along logistics routes. It took root in occupied cities. It reached far islands. It sat on the edge of forests. It lived in wooden houses, put together quickly inside field compounds. In documents from that time, these places were called comfort stations. The word comfort here did not soothe anyone. It covered coercion. Using a soft name like this is like calling a downpour a light shower. The sound is gentle. The water still falls hard. In military paperwork of that period, comfort stations were listed as part of logistics. That means they were inside the war organization. This was not a set of private crimes on the margins. It was on paper. It was coordinated. It moved with campaigns. And it attached itself to the lives of many women who, before all this, had rarely left their villages. Who were these women? Some were teenagers from rural areas, lured by small recruitment slips that promised good wages in a city. Some were widows raising young children. Some were daughters in poor families in colonized regions. Some were sold by brokers. Some were taken by local forces working with military police. Some believed they were going to do domestic service. They arrived and discovered the truth. Some knew the risk, but thought they could endure a few months, send money home, then run. Very few could control their path once the door closed. When a woman set foot inside a wooden house with a thin bamboo curtain and a sign on the porch, her choices narrowed to almost nothing. From that moment on, life was ruled by posted schedules, by a ledger on a desk, by mandatory checks carried out by military medical staff, and by short orders on the wall. Now we enter the first paradox. Language that covers. Why did this system avoid direct words? Why use terms that mute the sense of violence? Because words can be a fence. They let an organization keep going without forcing its own people to look too closely in the mirror. Reports used words like facility, equipment, resting room, periodic health check, ticket, fee schedule. It sounded like a service counter. Calling a person a subject of comfort instead of a victim changes the role in the sentence. In many places, managers used a ticket card. Every forced service left a small mark on the card. When the card reached the set number for that day, the woman could rest. All these small procedures made the system look orderly from a distance. But the order sat on top of dispossession. And because the words were smooth, many people did not have to face the reality in front of them. History shows the pattern again and again. When violence wants to last, it wears a friendly label. Second, recruitment and transport. Nearly every road to a comfort station began with a promise. Somewhere a man promised training. Somewhere else a man promised a shop job. Another place said there would be kitchen work for officers or cleaning in a field hospital. Often the broker came from the same village. Trust tied the knot. At the train station, papers were collected and held by someone else. At the port, groups of women were guided to the lower deck. In a new city, they were taken straight to a house with a thin curtain. Some tried to run. But in a strange city, without the language, without a map, without cash, they were quickly caught. In some regions, there was not even a disguise of recruitment. Local units swept through at night and moved people in trucks. Families at home had nowhere to ask. Everything felt like a whirlwind. Morning came and the bed was still warm, but its owner was gone. Third, the layout of space and time. A typical station had a few small rooms, thin walls, sliding doors, a wooden floor. In front stood the manager's desk. On it lay a ledger, a box for tickets, a stack of posted rules. There was often a small room reserved for periodic checks by military medical staff. A wall calendar marked the days of inspection and the name of the visiting unit. The day had set hours. The manager called by number instead of by name. Numbers are easy to replace. As the day passed, numbers were written in different inks. Red for evening, black for midday. Between periods, women were allowed to wash quickly in a wooden basin behind the house. Hot water was not always available. In winter, cold air slipped through cracks. In summer, mosquitoes gathered around a lamp. Each woman had a small trunk. Inside were a few pieces of clothing, a handkerchief, a family photo if she had saved one. Some kept a shard of mirror. Each morning they looked into it for a few seconds, checking whether the person in the glass still felt like herself. Fourth, the ledger and money that existed only on paper. Many places wrote that the women would receive a share per visit. The number on paper looked decent. In reality, deductions were many. Food, room, required clothing, medicine, management fees, in some stations even bed linen washing fees. After all deductions, almost nothing remained. That is why early promises about sending money home often evaporated. Some women still tried to hold on to hope by doing small sums every evening. They folded a slip of paper and hid it under the trunk. A few were quick with numbers and could remember every coin. Arithmetic still lost to the fact that someone else held the official book. You never touched the lines that determined your pay. Fifth, the role of military medical staff. In this system, medical checks were framed as protection for units more than protection for women. Periodic examination meant mandatory. The exam room was inside or near the station. The person who examined wore a uniform and used standardized forms. If someone showed signs of illness, a mark went into the record and she was separated. Sometimes she was moved elsewhere. Sometimes she was locked in a small room for treatment with the drugs of that era. Physical pain arrived with the fear of being treated as if she were a broken item. A broken item can be discarded. Many survivors later said the coldest part was not the injection or the bitter medicine. It was the way a look could turn a person into a case. When someone is reduced to a case, people speak in numbers and not in names. Sixth, life inside a moving campaign. Comfort stations shifted with units. Sometimes the wooden frame was taken apart and loaded onto trucks. Sometimes a small group of women was split off and sent by boat to an island outpost. Journeys passed through ports, forests, muddy trails. Each move lit a small hope and then put it out. At the next place, the sign returned to the porch. A fresh schedule went up on the wall. Near some fronts, artillery shook window panes at night. Glass hummed. People tried to sleep. Some counted from 1 to 100 again and again to force a drift into dreams. Some closed their eyes and pictured the road through their village with bamboo swaying. Memory was the only thing no one could confiscate. Yet memory also cut both ways. It reminded people that they had once lived ordinary lives. That memory helped them endure today. It also sharpened the pain. Seventh, the rules of silence. Two powers kept the system moving: orders and silence. Orders arrived fast. Silence lasted long. Silence inside the house. Silence on the street. Silence even after the war ended. Why did silence stay so long? Shame is heavy. Fear is heavy. Fear of blame. Fear of questions. Fear of neighbors' eyes. A wish not to break parents' hearts. A lack of documents to prove what happened. Some returned to their old homes and could not speak a single sentence. Some moved far away and lived as if they had never existed. Silence does not heal. It buries. What is buried does not vanish. It grows roots. Roots push into sleep. Roots crawl through memory. Roots surface in the eyes of grown children when they ask where their mother went in those years. Eighth, testimonies that rose after decades. Only long after the guns went quiet did survivors begin to speak in public. In some places. At first there were small conversations. Then there were talks in halls. Many spoke their own names out loud for the first time in a crowd after a lifetime of nicknames and false names. Every account was a shard. Shards have sharp edges. But put them together and a picture appears. The picture does not need heavy adjectives. It needs pieces placed in the right spots. Dates, locations, station names, how the place was organized, a corner of a bed, a ledger on a desk, an examination, a truck ride, a look through a doorway. Small details add weight. That weight makes listeners sit a little longer after a video ends. Ninth, public debate about words and responsibility. Once the story entered daylight, societies argued about labels, about degrees of responsibility, about textbook lines, about the meaning of apology, about the value of symbolic support, about memorials. Every nation involved carried its own memories and pain and defenses. Some said the system merely managed a pre-existing problem. If it was management, why were women not allowed to say no? Some said it was labor by contract. If it was a contract, why were papers seized and exits locked? Some said it was past and should stay there. If it is past, why does the present still tremble when we touch it? Public vocabulary remains a battleground. When a word is shaded, it may change shape in public. The shadow remains. So every time we choose words, we are choosing sides. 10th, why learn this on a channel that often explores unusual subjects? Because the unusual is not only in the supernatural. It is in the way a society can build a tidy frame to contain a pain that cannot be measured. It is in the way a word like comfort can become a curtain. It is in the way a ticket card can turn a person into a row of silent squares. It is in the way a machine can run smoothly, while the people inside it are worn down day by day. We learn to know. We know so that we do not repeat. If emotions feel strong as you listen, breathe slowly. Remember that our aim is not to shock. Our aim is to name correctly and to place the story in the region's map of memory. Now walk with me through a short sequence of images. Each image is a link in a chain. Image 1. A recruitment flyer at a rural market, promising light work and good pay. Image 2. A train carrying young people away from home. Image 3. A thin wooden door with a bamboo curtain moving in the wind. Image 4. A thick ledger on a manager's desk with corners curled from too many flips. Image 5. A small exam room with a basin and a tray of instruments. Image 6. A ticket card covered with marks. Image 7. An old family photo in a trunk. Image 8. A porch sign with the word "Comfort" hanging from a nail. Image 9. A dirt road leading through a compound. Image 10. A woman looking through a doorway, her eyes reaching farther than the road. 10 images. No big letters. No bright colors. Stop for a breath at each one. You will understand why these stories must be told. You may be asking, why did the military want such a system? The short answer is this. It claimed to control soldier behavior, to maintain discipline, to limit crimes outside the compound, to meet logistics goals. Ask the next questions. If the target was discipline, discipline for whom? If the aim was protection, protection for whom? When the answer points to soldiers instead of women, the system's choice of side stands out. When a system chooses a side, every later explanation leans in that direction. You do not need complicated concepts. Follow the straight line of questions. Who holds power? Who does not? Who signs? Who cannot sign? Who gets to leave? Who cannot? Who speaks? Who is forced into silence? Step into the daily rhythm. Morning began with a knock on the door. The manager handed out ticket cards. Units arrived in shifts. Midday was a rushed time for cold rice. Rules on the wall structured the hours. No drying wet clothes in the room. No going out after curfew. No contact with outsiders. No keeping cash above the amount written on the notice. Those lines made up a day's skeleton. But a day here was not a day at home. A day in a village had roosters and smoke from a cooking fire, and voices calling in a yard. A day in a comfort station had boot steps, the sting of disinfectant, the sound of a ledger opening and closing. When night fell, silence grew heavier. At some stations, the sound of the sea moved in steady beats. At others, insects sang. Each sound became a marker. People counted weeks by exam days. They counted months by moves. They counted years by the way old scars faded on a hand. Who were the managers? In some places they were local residents who cooperated. In other places they came from elsewhere. They knew how to keep books. They worked by the rules. Some were rough, some kept quiet and moved tasks along. Whoever they were, they held keys. The key to a room. The key to a trunk. The key to the rare pass that allowed a walk outside. When one person holds many keys, that person also controls who asks and who answers. In ordinary life, a person with many keys is often trusted. Here, the key holder was the gatekeeper. This quiet reversal kept the machine running. It also kept some middle figures from seeing the wound they were helping to maintain. There is a critical point we must not miss. The difference between the paper and the life. On paper, the system can look neat. Rules on a wall, exam days on a calendar, ticket cards, shares in a ledger. But life does not move in tidy rows. Life has tears. Life has fear. Life has fevers in the night. Life includes sudden fainting from exhaustion, hair that falls out from poor nutrition, coughs that do not end, clothes that lose color from constant washing, hands that crack, eyes that avoid one another because people do not want to cry. When we describe a system, we can name procedures. When we describe people, we must name feelings. Feeling does not go into the ledger. Feeling does not count as a stamp. You may wonder whether escape was possible. A few escaped. On a night with hard rain, someone slipped through a gap in the fence. Wind pushed water against her face. The dirt road turned slick. She ran until she fell. She stood and ran again. One woman made it to a thatched house on the edge of a town. No one there spoke her language. She had no identification, no money, no family nearby. When the sun rose, fear grew large like a mountain. Some were caught within days. Some vanished from the record, and history does not know what became of them. The answer to the question, was there a way out, is sad and short, very rare. This is not because those who ran were foolish. It is because the net around them was thick. Let us pause to speak about collective memory. Memory is not only a private act. A community decides what to keep or to forget. When one generation chooses not to speak, memory goes to the basement. When another generation chooses to speak, memory comes upstairs. In recent years, there have been memorial activities, small exhibits, talks with witnesses, projects to record voices.
Today,
every time
we
a
honor
face
the
appears
memory
on a
of
screen
those
with
who
a calm
endured
and steady
unimaginable
voice,
hardships.
the common memory gains a peace. People ask, what good does remembrance do for today? It helps us name ideas correctly. It helps children learn to name correctly. It helps society see that a system can last only when silence surrounds it. When silence breaks, the system loses shelter. Consider the communities around the stations. Did they know? Some knew and stayed quiet. Some did not know because everything happened behind closed doors. Some made a living near the compound by running small food stalls or selling supplies. History is not a painting in only black and white. This does not blur the main line. The main line is the removal of women's autonomy. When we touch this line, arguments about minor details must step back. Without autonomy, any supposed agreement is counterfeit. This is a basic rule when we read documents, listen to testimonies, and speak with fairness. You may also ask how survivors rebuilt their lives. What did they hold on to in order to continue? The answers differ. Some found peace in tending small gardens. They watered rows and watched green shoots rise. Some found comfort in singing at a church or a village temple. Some chose manual work to keep their minds from circling back. Some wrote down a few pages in a school notebook. Some raised grandchildren and saw new life in a child's smile. Some gathered courage to speak to the public. Every path deserves respect. We listen without judgment. We retell without forcing lessons upon them. Their final choice was to protect dignity in the days that remained. Our choice is to stand beside them with understanding. This story has 3 layers that are worth carrying forward. Layer 1 is language. Ask whether a name hides a truth. Layer 2 is organization. Ask who records, who holds, who controls. Layer 3 is the human level. Ask what it feels like for people inside.
The path.
When you
to
move through all
understanding.
3, you can draw a simple and accurate map. From the label to the ledger. From the ledger to the heart. Whenever you meet a system that sounds smooth, check whether the heart inside is heard. That is not only a lesson for the past, it is a tool for reading the present. Now we close with a short narrative thread that is clearly marked as a respectful reconstruction. Imagine a young woman from a coastal village. She likes to run along the sand at dawn. One day, a stranger comes to the market and promises paid work. She leaves. The train pulls away. The city greets her with horns and smoke. A thin curtain closes over a wooden doorway. Years pass and feel like weeks inside her memory. The war ends. She returns. Her house is still there. The coconut tree still stands beside the well. The 2 pairs of sandals on the step are gone because her father has passed away. She quietly cleans the room. She replants the vegetable rows. Each evening by the shore, she looks far out across the water. Sometimes she feels as if she has walked her life in a circle. One day, a young person asks where her years went.
Can you tell us
She
what
sits
happened
and begins to
during
speak.
that time?
Her voice is slow. Sentences are short. She does not weep. She does not dramatize. She sets plain truth on the table with care. When she finishes, the young person asks to take a photo of the shore. There is no person in the image. There is wind in the trees and a thin line of foam. Sometimes the right way to tell is to let the wind speak. In a classroom, this story can become small lessons. One lesson on language and power.
The structure
One lesson
and
on
people
structure
involved.
and people. One lesson on memory and healing. Let students read a short, imagined diary entry written in the voice of someone inside the system. Let them draw a simple layout of a station to see how the organization worked. Let them discuss naming. Let them write a letter to an unknown woman from history that
Many of us come
says,
from different
"We
nations
have heard
with
you."
different backgrounds and experiences.
When young people learn to name and to listen, history begins to do its work of repair.
You may wonder what we should do with this memory.
The answer is not to turn it into a tour of emotions. The answer is not to preach. The answer is to keep a place for it in our shared memory. Keep a day of remembrance. Keep a page in a school book. Keep a conversation at a family table. Offer a gentle correction when someone uses a euphemism. Respect both those who want to speak and those who choose quiet. History does not require us to weep more. It asks us to remember accurately. When the video ends, you may feel a weight.
The wounds of the past still
Let it be
linger,
heavy for a moment.
but our spirit of
Heavy enough that you walk slowly through other people's stories. Heavy enough that you do not cover pain with a friendly label. Heavy enough that you look straight at the way an organization can turn a person into a number. After the weight has settled, take a deep breath. Picture the faces of the women without famous names. They were not extras in history. They were the center of the very story we are trying to understand. Before we part, keep this small chain of sentences for memory. Comfort here did not mean care. A station here was not a refuge. A ledger existed to control. A ticket card existed to count. A medical check existed to exclude. A promise often hid a trap. Silence was a wall. Testimony is a key. Memory is a roof. Dignity is not to be taken. Even if war has ended, even if documents claim matters are settled, even if debates list ranges of responsibility, there are still eyes that once looked through a thin wooden doorway. When we name things correctly, those eyes are led to a safer place. If you have stayed to this point, you have done something important. You have given an old story room to live in the present. Every listen lays another stone on the path toward light. That path is not reserved for any one nation. It is for anyone who wants a world where language is not used to cover harm. Carry this story with you. When you hear a gentle label, ask what sits behind it. When you see a smooth system, ask who pays the cost. When you meet someone who is quiet, remember that quiet can be a thin armor. Do not pull it away. Stand nearby. Wait for the door to open. When it opens, listen with both ears and with your heart. The question we opened with no longer hangs between sentences. The Empire of Japan used words as a curtain. It built a system that marched with campaigns and sat inside logistics. It drew many young people into a machine with promises and with force. It held their days inside ticket cards, exam schedules, posted rules, and orders. It left a long band of silence that later generations had to cut through with testimony. We have looked directly at these facts. We did not open wounds to cause pain. We opened them to see clearly. Seeing clearly helps us avoid repetition. Seeing clearly helps us choose the side of human dignity in every story we tell. Thank you for your time. When the screen goes dark, you may hear a fan or traffic outside. Give 1 minute to those who were asked to be silent for many years. Then step out softly, with a reminder in your mind. Name things accurately. Keep a room for memory. Choose the human side in every story you carry forward.